Hey folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me once again as we look to the horizon. I'm bringing you another editing vlog today because that's most of what I've been doing for the last week. And I was working on a collaborative project that I'm doing with a couple of other guys this weekend, and I thought, we were doing a revision on it about halfway through, and that's not when I usually like to do revisions. And I thought it might be interesting to talk about the pros and cons of doing revisions in different places. And the first thing to keep in mind is it doesn't matter so much where you do revisions so long as you can kind of adapt to that placement. What's really important is figuring out your work process. I like to do revisions primarily at the end because that helps me stay on the thread of the story and remain focused on getting to that end point, which is really the payoff for me. Getting to that end point the first time is what really matters to me. And then the revision process and publishing and all of that, that is more a secondary concern. But that's not true for everyone. And for some people, the process is a big part of the reward. They may want to edit while they are working on the story because that part of the process is something they find very fulfilling. By the same token, doing editing may be a part of your priming the pump when you have writer's block. That's one of the first things I try. As I mentioned last week, when I have writer's block, I will do a little bit of editing to see if that can get me back into the groove. So I won't necessarily wait till the end to do all of my editing because I may find it more conductive to the process to do it in the middle. And there's another reason you may choose to do some editing in the middle, and that's because you realize you have plot points that are not lined up for whatever reason, and you need to go back and you need to make A match B because I don't know if you're like me, but I often have to go back and double check things in earlier chapters to make sure they're lining up with what I am envisioning happening in later chapters. And if I've changed something since I wrote that early chapter, I will need to then make things line up a little bit so that if I have to go back and consult that, I can actually not trip myself up by having details be incongruous in the first draft. So I don't always do that. In fact, if you watched one of my earlier videos on editing Burning Bright, I did wait until the end to revise some stuff in the early chapters. But I did make notes in my world building book for Burning Bright that I would need to go back to the first couple of chapters and make those revisions, and that I should write later parts in line with my new world building ideas. So it really is a toss up depending on your process and what kind of changes you need to make when you edit things. And it depends partly on your workflow and how you think personally. So not everyone is going to choose to edit when I do in the way that I do, and that's fine. But there are other considerations that may dictate when you make edits. This is a collaborative project. I'm working on the second phase of Modded with Tungsten and Narwhal, and that project has 3 people involved in it right now. Tungsten is the project leader, and he wanted us to make some edits. So we went and we made edits. When you are writing as part of a team, you write in the way that the team leader wants you to write. And that is something that is kind of difficult for some writers because you get so buried in your own process. Becoming flexible so you can work better with other people is an obstacle. And I would recommend that if you are especially studying writing at the high school or college level, you try and work in teams as early as possible so you can develop those skills before you get too ossified in your own way of working. Developing that flexibility will really help you as a professional writer in any capacity, whether it's technical writing, whether it's journalism, or if it's collaborative fiction writing. All of those areas require you to be more flexible when writing in a team than they do when writing as an individual. So that's something you really need to think about, who you're going to be writing with and where the edits are going to be necessary. And especially, again, when you are working as a team and you have elements that are not synced up, that is going to be much more likely to trip up a writing team than a writing individual, because when you have a whole bunch of people looking at a thing, and one person is remembering one set of details and another person is remembering another set of details, they have to go back to the actual text to make sure everything is lining up. And if you haven't edited to make up for these kind of details, then you will need to seriously look at your final revision is going to be much more difficult, because you're going to have been talking at cross purposes for so long. That's another reason I think we made these edits very early as opposed to later on down the line. So you can't always revise in the same way, and you may occasionally have to revise in ways that help other writers rather than in the way that is most helpful to you personally. And I know that a lot of writers, there's a certain amount of ego that goes into being a creative type. You have to believe enough in your own creative vision to spend all this time working it out and then offer it to other people as something that's good and worth their time. But there are times in the creative process you have to set that ego aside in order to facilitate actually finishing. And if you are interested in writing, and especially if you are interested in writing in a collaborative sense, which is anything that involves TV or movies or the news or even collaborative fiction universes, you really need to work out those skills and get them hammered down, because revision is not just something you can do on your own schedule. Revision is part of making sure your vision is clearly communicated to others. And if that communication is happening behind the scenes before the final project is even ready, that makes revision even more important to communicating to other people, in this case, your team, what is going on. So yeah, pay a lot of attention to that. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, there's a like button and subscribe button down below. You can use those as you see fit, and I will talk to you later.